SNHell, a look back at Saturday Night Live with your hosts, Matt and Keith. Brought to you by Lion's Den Audio Theater. Like and subscribe to Lion's Den Audio Theater for more Lion's Den goodness. And here are your hosts, Keith and Matt.
Saturday Night Live, Season 4, Episode 12, starring Rick Nelson, originally aired on February 17th, 1979. Hello and welcome to SNHell. My name is Keith. With me as always, my good buddy Matt. Hello, Matt.
Good evening. Happy Saturday to you.
You as well. And we're here with the great Rick Nelson. I'm going to say Ricky Nelson a lot. I know he changed it as he grew up, but it's hard for me not to say Ricky Nelson.
I'll have more to say.
Joining us tonight for the first time in a little while, probably first time since season 4 began, it's our dear friend Rebecca. Hello, Rebecca.
Hello, Keith. Hello, Matt.
Hello.
Welcome to SNHell again. It's season 4. There have been some changes since you last joined us. Interested to hear what you have to say about a few things as we go tonight, Rebecca.
Great. Looking forward to it.
So, Ricky Nelson, one of the first television child stars, started working very young with his parents, Ozzie and Harriet Nelson, and later became a television star from his appearances on their show, The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, along with his older brother, David. When he hit his teens at the very vanguard of rock music and rockabilly hitting the mainstream, he switched over to music. By the very nature of his timing and his father's ingenuity, he really has a couple of firsts. Like Traveling Man was considered by many to be the first rock and roll music video. There is some dispute to that, but it's definitely among the first. And his song Poor Little Fool was the very first number 1 on the Billboard's Hot 100. His rockabilly interests made it possible for him musically to straddle some genres and to produce music that appealed to a broad market without being just too goofy and poppy. Before going into this, what did you guys know about Rick Nelson?
Trip down memory lane. My dad was quite a fan.
Yeah.
So I remember listening to a lot of his songs on road trips and family get-togethers and parties and dances and things like that growing up when I was little. So the name didn't quite ring a bell with me, but all the songs, I was like, oh yeah.
That one, yeah.
That one, I forgot about that song. So definitely hit some core memories.
I got nothing on this guy. The only thing I know is Ricky Nelson's Lonesome Town was on the Pulp Fiction soundtrack.
It certainly was, yeah. By all accounts, he was a really nice, humble guy. Like you said about Desi Arnaz Jr., Matt, a nice young man. Sadly passed away in 85 in a plane accident. By the very nature of his talents and his timing, he was one of the very first teen idols, blazing a trail, I think. He was about 5 or 6 years younger than Elvis, but he was his contemporary, and I think they actually became friends later. Our musical guest is Judy Collins. We'll talk about Judy Collins when we get to her. The only really big news here, the only sort of big news that I can think of going through my timeline here is that this was sort of in the middle of when Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi were commuting back and forth to the West Coast to shoot Steven Spielberg's 1941. So, I mean, that must have been a grueling period for them. Plus, allegedly, John's Demons were at a high point here. You guys ready to jump right in the show?
Sure.
Yes, sir.
All right, so we go to our cold open. Bill Murray plays an early morning Chicago radio DJ called Dick Lanky, and he hosts a call-in show, sort of just your typical old-school radio DJ show. Jane voices a caller who's asking for folks to donate blood for 2 sick twins. When they meet their blood goal, she's going to send some lobsters from Maine, some live lobsters from Maine. Dan enters as weatherman Todd Sweeney. He gives a forecast, but when he's asked by Dick what the temperature is right now, Todd doesn't know. Gilda then calls in, voicing someone who tells them it's 28 degrees, but she wonders if ex-astronaut Frank Borman is also a pilot for Eastern Airlines. Garrett calls in, wondering about a boy in New Jersey who had said needed breast milk to survive. He has some, and he'd like to send it out. John then calls in with a number for Eastern Airlines that Bill can call. So Bill calls an operator. He casually mentions while waiting that Rock Hudson is 61 and Audrey Hepburn is 50 today. Lorraine then voices an Eastern Airlines operator and a promotions rep after that. She mentions that Frank Borman's in Montreal. Bill asks for Frank Borman's number in Montreal. so he can call and find out if he was indeed the pilot that Gilda's character was wondering about. John then enters as a delivery person, and he's dropping off the 2 lobsters promised by Jane. I guess they met the blood goal for those 2 sick twins. Bill asks if those lobsters are flown in live from Maine, and John says no, they're live from New York. This was not bad. Bill did a good job as the not-so-stereotypical DJ. It's probably a more realistic performance of a radio DJ than that sort of stereotypical thing that we hear all the time. Calls were okay and funny. The energy was there, but I didn't laugh a lot at this. But I did appreciate the fact that for a show that even in this early stage has already begun to alternate between like political or meta for the cold opens, I'm glad they kind of branched out. Little disappointed it wasn't as great as I'd hoped, but I'm putting that more down on the writing because everyone seemed to be right on with their performances. It
was good. It was a nice throwback for me, like old time radio. They'd throw out random information, facts, people call up randomly. So it did feel very kind of real and not so, farcical, I guess. It was good. Again, I also did not really laugh. I think the only thing is, like, why does he have breast milk?
Yeah, that was the biggest laugh. Yeah,
it was the best. That was the only one. I was like, well, why does he have breast milk? So that's where my mind went. Then I started rolling down in my own mind of what that storyline would be. Okay, and I enjoyed the nice little quick swap from no, it's live from New York.
It wasn't for me. I thought it was a little too real. And I think you're in the cold open. This should be like something quick and hot, grab some attention here. And Bill was really good at it. Like, he'd make a good DJ. I loved him delivering those like little lines while he was waiting on the phone, just throwing out some little updates. And it's the cast is still getting pops just when they walk out on stage, which is interesting. And you guys already said it. Garrett saying, "I have some." was a fantastic moment. Faint praise, because I thought it was not a very good idea for a cold open.
It was an odd choice for a cold open for sure. Yeah, Rebecca, and it did bring me back to like Trading Center and Swap Shop, the 2 shows that we used to have on our local station. So, Rebecca, this is your first time seeing the new intro. What's your thoughts on the new headshots and all that stuff at the beginning of the show? Certainly an iconic thing that we see over the years, but this is a different style from the last one you saw.
Yeah, it was interesting. The New York scenes are always great, but what I don't like is the headshots of everybody. They remind me of those creepy 20s or whatever. I don't even know what decade they were in, but the black and white pictures that then they would then try to paint color on.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you'd have these like dead-eyed children looking at you with rosy cheeks.
20s through 40s, I think. Yeah.
It freaked me out as a child, and I still don't like them today. They're like some ghostly horror film thing, and that all those headshots in the opening, I was like, oh God, who decided this was a good style?
Yeah, most folks' cheeks are quite rosy in their pictures. Yeah.
In their pictures, and everything else is like dead gray. And
I will say Jane looks amazing in hers, but a lot of them are kind of, they're different.
Oh, no, thank you. Blech.
We now have the monologue. Ricky Nelson comes down to home base, and right away you see there's a band and a guitar on a stand, so you know where this is going. Nelson mentions that it's the first time many folks have seen him in color, and if they'd rather see him in black and white, they can change the color settings on their TV. He goes into, in my opinion, 2 of it, I don't know, maybe they're all hits, but he sings Hello, Mary Lou, Goodbye Heart, a song I absolutely adore. Traveling Man, a song I kind of enjoy, and then a song Fools Rush In, which I've heard, but I'm not too big on it. By this point in time in his career, he's really delving into country music. This is a countrified version of an old big band piece, which was fine, but I prefer the original. To absolutely no surprise to me, this monologue turned into a 3-song set. I like Ricky Nelson, and I really like 2 of the 3 songs, and I suppose I liked all the performances. The first 2 anyway. But during this performance, it really kind of hit me. It's like, why is Rick Nelson hosting tonight? There's nothing recent to promote. He's not that well known for being a comic actor, especially at this point. So I really got intrigued as to like, what's their motivation? And I really couldn't find anything that said. So I kind of was like, okay, Ricky, now show me. It became almost a challenge. Show me why you're hosting tonight. He is a logical choice for a musical guest, but Yeah.
Boo. I wrote FML right away on my notes when I saw that band. It's not a good idea for a cold open. It's not a good idea for a monologue either. Just throw the format out the window this week, I guess. What do we care about anything? Being facetious, of course. But this was painful chore for me, as you can well imagine. I hate when there's so much damn music. It felt like some shit they'd pulled in season 1. Like you've got kind of like a little bit of a format down now. The show is a runaway hit. Stop it.
The only good thing for me that he started singing was that I realized then who he was. But he's not the musical guest.
Yeah.
But again, it's not the opening monologue that we should be getting, because it would be nice to hear maybe why he's excited to be there tonight and what's he, why are you here, why are you hosting, what's going on in your life.
Yeah, I mean, his last gig that I could see was a guest appearance on The Love Boat that aired significantly before. He's not promoting that,
Ouch.
Yeah. All right, we're off to the Twilight Zone. So we start with Dan as Rod Serling. Rick Nelson is playing himself at 16, a typical American teenager in a typical black and white TV home. He walks into a kitchen, and Jane appears as June Cleaver. Apparently, he's walked into the Leave It to Beaver world. He doesn't know where he is. She tells him where he's at, and the theme song starts. She gives him some brownies and tells him to go wash up. John and Bill then enter as Beaver Cleaver and Eddie Haskell. Bill is hilarious in here as Eddie Haskell. He does his usual phony banter. Beaver doesn't know who Ricky is. Ricky asks if he can get the directions to the Nelson's house. We then pan over to Dan Aykroyd as Serling again. He says that Nelson has entered a strange neighborhood. Nelson then enters another house. It's the same set. It turns out to be the Anderson home from Father Knows Best. They think he's a friend of their son, Bud, and their older daughter, Betty's blind date. John then enters as Bud and says he's never met Rick before. And Jane does a great bit in there as Betty, saying how she's not attractive and no one would ever want to date her, which was pretty accurate for how I remember Betty. Mr. Anderson says that Ricky's late for dinner, and if he doesn't get home, his dinner will be cold and he'll have a lot of explaining to do. Then it pans over to Dan, and Dan says, how can anyone call home? Because who would take a collect call from the Twilight Zone? We then cut back over to the set again, and this time it's the Make Room for Daddy / Danny Thomas show set. Jane and Lorraine, playing the mom and the daughter, are eating pancakes, and Garrett is there as Louise the maid. John enters as Danny Thomas's character, Danny Williams. He's reading the paper, and Ricky Nelson comes in, and they think he's Rusty. Williams reads the paper and says that Nelson boy is still missing. Ricky says who he is, and the whole family does a spit take made famous on the show by Danny Thomas. The camera pans over to Dan, and he's now George Burns, and he tells a very unfunny George Burns-esque story about confusing two former performers he worked with called Rusty and Ricky. We then pan back over to the set. Ricky comes into the kitchen, and we hear someone call out for Ricky. He says, I'm Ricky. And the person calling out turns out to be Gilda as Lucy. She questions him about who he is, and he says he's Ricky, and she says, well, who are you bringing home from supper? He says Cesar Romero. She realizes she's cooking supper and forgot the turkey in the oven. Tom Schiller then reprises his role as Ricky Ricardo, and Bill is there with him as Cesar Romero. We then pan over to Dan Aykroyd as Hitchcock, who says Ricky could have easily gotten home with a star map, but for reasons unknown to him, the sponsors would not permit it. Phew. I could do a whole episode on this sketch alone. I thought this was very fun, very ambitious. Most actors were playing multiple characters. Laughed a lot. This is totally an homage to a whole slew of shows, about 6-7 shows mentioned in there that this cast and these writers would have grown up with. I'm very familiar with the shows, other than Father Knows Best, which I kind of know in passing. And that's where the problem is going to rise here, I think. Folks familiar with these shows are going to appreciate this sketch a lot more than those who don't. Rather than go into the individual impressions and stuff, the broad strokes on this, these were really well done impressions. Special kudos to Jane, Dan, and Bill. Super impressed with the quick changes in costume and wig and makeup. The production people really, really nailed this. Ricky Nelson didn't really have much to do other than kind of play a version of himself and let others get the laughs and play the scene. As the camera pulled back, we could see the set and a couple of the actors in color. And I was just really glad they did this in black and white. I adored this sketch. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was ambitious and brilliant. And I think I'm going to be the only one to say that right now.
Yeah, you're right, Keith. I guess my age might be showing because, this did nothing for me. I've heard of Leave It to Beaver. I've heard of, I Love Lucy. I even seen a little bit of Lucy. But overall, I don't have much context to go with this. It was hard for me to get into it because I just don't have that history of those shows. I'm sure those that did, like you said, like yourself, probably did enjoy it a lot more than I did.
I didn't know any of these shows either, Rebecca. I felt extremely disconnected from the material. While I could appreciate it from a production perspective, like, who is this for? The idea, we hear that Lorne was like, oh, I want a TV show where it's real people, like people are really talking, and then you roll out country music superstar Ricky Nelson, and you do a bunch of jokes about 50s television. I think they're really way off the demo this week. As much as I can sit there and enjoy little production things all day, and Dan was good. I got to mention that, and Jane was fun in her recurring roles, but this is a big whoosh for me. I'm not the target audience. I can write a bunch of jokes about 80s cartoons, and not many people will find them funny. I don't know, but it was a different time. It was 1979. I'm not quite alive yet when this airs, so it's unfair for me to say, because at this point it's only like them, if Saturday Night Live made a joke about 90s shows today, it's really not a hell of a lot different. So who am I to say? I think it maybe just aged really poorly. But one thing I know for sure is that I didn't care for it.
It's basically like if 10 years ago Jaleel White had hosted and they made him wander through, the TGIF lineup with really good impressions. You know what I'm saying?
I do. I know exactly.
And I guarantee it would have been a hit. Good or bad, people would have loved it. We are now off to Rock against Yeast. And this starts with Paul Schaefer and Bill Murray playing two of our favorites, Matt, Don Kirshner and Jerry Aldini. They're in a crowd. I don't even know if you like Jerry Aldini, but you sure love the name, eh?
Yeah, I don't. Jerry Aldini's kind of a bad person.
Yeah, but you love him for it. They're in a crowded studio green room. They're standing at the craft service table. Kirshner thinks it's a fabulous thing that so many people are coming to perform at his benefit. Aldini says there's only one guy who could put this type of thing together. Lorraine enters as Olivia Newton-John, and Aldini gives her a little tootski of Coke. Dawn thanks her for coming. She says she's happy to be there to be a part of their benefit against yeast infections. Kirshner wonders what became of Candy Slice. We then pan over to Ricky Nelson, who's playing himself. He's talking to Garrett as Bob Marley. Marley sees both Aykroyd and Belushi coming in as Elvis impersonators. They play two versions of the King, a young one and an old one, and their act is called the Elvi. Ricky introduces the Elvi to Marley and Dolly Parton, played by Jane. Dolly tells Bob that she loves his Reggie music. They're all looking for Candy Slice, though. And then Bill opens the door, and Gilda as Candy falls in. Bill as Jerry then has to carry her around. Olivia wishes Candy good luck in her performance tonight, and Candy belches in her face. Candy then comes face to face with Parton's breasts and tells Dolly Parton that she's getting a zit. She then mistakes Ricky Nelson for Fabian. As it's Candy's turn to perform, Bill Murray and Tom Davis, playing a roadie named Howard, carry Candy Slice out to the actual stage to actually physically pick her up and take her to home base as the audience claps. He introduces the Candy Slice group, and Candy says to Mick Jagger, if he's out there, this is for you. Candy's band performs Gimme Mick, a punk love song to Mick Jagger. I know this sketch and this song is a big hit for a lot of folks, and I did enjoy it, and I love the ambition of this sketch. That's two in a row where they really went all out. I just don't think I enjoy Candy Slice. And for no reason at all, I kind of think this is another attempt at the Blues Brothers. The problem with Candy Slice, this one and the previous performance, I found the song almost impossible to make out. I had to re-listen 2 or 3 times and maybe only caught 2 or 3 of the words. From a punk standpoint, maybe that's fine. From a comic standpoint, it doesn't work. I never tire of Kirshner and Aldini, and I thought it was pretty cool that Paul Schaefer played Don Kirshner, and then he ran out to be the drummer of Candy's band. I did enjoy them carrying Gilda through the crowd and love when they do stuff like that. Very moot point, but with all the unique names and characters around music in the 70s, what they decided to use was Dolly Parton, Bob Marley, and a couple of Elvises. You know, all things considered, this wasn't bad. It just didn't blow me away the way I was thinking it might.
I think I would agree with you for the most part. I do really like Jerry Aldini. And Paul Schaefer always cracks me up when he gets to do something, just be out there on camera. I like seeing Paul Schaefer. Lorraine as Olivia Newton-John got a really good laugh out of me, especially when she had a little tootski. Jane was funny as Dolly, too. It was fun seeing Jane in character like that, which you don't see very often. Everything was going really well for the first half of the sketch, but oh my goodness, I did not need a full performance from Candy. I thought maybe, you know, she's going to collapse at the mic or something's going to happen, but surely we don't have to sit here and listen to another entire song. I did think the line, Mick Jagger don't keep regular hours, was funny.
So yeah, again, for me, it was a bit of a ho-hum. You know, I enjoyed their impersonations. The Elvi got a little bit of laugh out of myself. I was like, oh, that's kind of a funny name. Dolly was great. I think there might have been the Fonz in the background. I did enjoy them carrying her through, you know, the background and out to the stage. I also, Matt, was hoping it wasn't going to be a full song, and of course it was. And it sounds like you guys have a bit of a context with some of these characters. Like, I don't know much about Candy or the other two. To me, it was just not really super enjoyable.
I know it's only 2, but it's memorable. This is the last we see of Candy Slice, Matt.
I'm fine with that, but a little surprised. But, you know, the times they are a-changing. It's 1979. You know, the 80s are on the horizon. Punk's on its way out.
We're now off to Weekend Update. The first shot is Muhammad Ali at a piano. He's said to be training for a fight against Ray Charles. This episode is brought to you by Chiclet of the Sea. It's a tuna-flavored chewing gum. We get a story about the Shah and some of his aides being killed, and the Shah announces from Morocco that he'll be vacation. Chico Escuela comes out saying he'll be leaving Weekend Update to join the Mets to make a comeback. He does his usual shtick, but also goes in to say that Bill Murray has been very, very good to him. Hain, however, has been a sarcastic bish. And these are all done over photos of Chico with Bill and Jane. And Jane then has a poem about the Shah and the Ayatollah. When the poem goes flat, Jane kind of pushes the page a little further away from her than she usually does. Bill Murray reports on Fort Lincoln's in a band called the Honest Abe's. He notes that the band members were all shot at Ford's Theater. Dan and Jane do a counterpoint about cocaine, where Jane is pro freedom of drug use and Dan talks about all the bad side effects and suggests that maybe they could create a drug that will kill off all the bad people like Jane. This was a weak update, except for Chico, which I thought was funny. The counterpoint, which I thought was good. And I liked Jane's little reaction, pushing that bad poem slightly further away from her. But other than that, the jokes were a little flat. I did like Chiclet of the Sea, though.
Yeah, for me, I usually look forward to Weekend Update, especially with this episode. I was like, oh, thank goodness, something hopefully good will come out of here. And I was disappointed. Was not a lot there. I also enjoyed Chiclet of the Sea. I wasn't sure exactly what happened with the paper, but now that you pointed out, I'm like, yes, I get that's what she did. Counterpoint, it was good. It was fun.
Pretty weak update overall. I wish there were crazier stories in Weekend Update sometimes, like, oh, by the way, we're dead because of sea mutants come March 2nd. Jane? Mm-hmm. And yeah. I guess, but you know what? I think that's why I liked Kevin Nealon so much later. The Iran stuff is so heavy. Always with the Shaw, and I get it, current events and weekend update, but man, they really go with the Iran stuff lately. It's just so topical that it makes it hard to get into for me. Because of that, it suffers, and it's not always like that, and it doesn't need to be like that. Sometimes it's inevitably going to be like that, I guess. But, for the most part, I find I can watch a lot of retro weekend updates and still get a good laugh out of them. It doesn't seem to matter what era they're from. So sometimes I do just think they lean into it a little too heavily.
Yeah, and they don't know how bad it's going to get either. It does tone, like by 80, you don't see hardly any Iran jokes, We're now off to Quien es Macho. I apologize that I'm a French speaker, not a Spanish speaker. This is a Spanish game show. It's hosted by Bill as Paco Valenzuela, and it's a Spanish-speaking game show based on the question, who is more macho? Bill plays the host, and Gilda and Ricky Nelson are the guests. So basically, the rules of this game is Bill's character, Paco, will ask people who is more macho, and he'll show two celebrities, and they have to pick and at times justify. So Ricky is asked who is more macho, Fernando Lamas or Ricardo Montalban. Nelson guesses that Montalban, but he's actually wrong, and Bill points out that Lamas is a bit more macho. Gilda is then asked David Johansen, Lloyd Bridges, or Jack Lord. Gilda struggles over this one. A Chiron reveals that it's Bridges because he plays an underwater investigator. As she's working this out and figures it out, Dan enters as Elliot Ness and tells Paco to put his hands up. In a throwback to the original Untouchable series, but also to our Desi Arnaz episode, he calls in Lee, Rico, and Youngblood to start tossing the place. He is arresting Paco for being an illegal alien, and he orders his men to search the place. And while they're searching, they find a bunch of random, other undocumented migrants, I suppose is the term now, finding in various parts of the set. Ness then tries to break the contestant's desk, but he can't. Sort of chaos ensues here. This had a really fun beginning, a really bizarre ending. I didn't like the sketch, but I did enjoy the performances. The idea was kind of fun, but it seems like they couldn't figure an ending, so they just went with something bizarre.
It was a bit chaotic for me. I did think Dan was good. I mean, I wasn't I know who Elliot Ness is, but it's not like I was some big fan. Just kind of like you said, not to repeat you, but I liked the idea, but I wrote that the execution was just a bit of a mess. I think it was too chaotic to be coherent and too incoherent to be truly funny.
I agree. Also with not being a Spanish speaker, and I know it probably was like the easiest. I kind of tuned out, to be honest, because I did not know what they were saying. It just seemed to spiral into crazy. Just did not find very funny or super enjoyable. I didn't enjoy the execution of it all. I was not feeling this episode, and I was really hoping the next thing will be good. And then I was disappointed yet again. I'm very disheartened by this whole episode.
Well, something tells me our next segment is not going to bring you back. It's Hard Time for Lovers, sung by Judy Collins, from the album of the same name, released just that month, February of 79. It doesn't look like either the album or the single charted. So this was performed, Hard Time for Lovers, with a mix of her own band and the SNL band. I didn't know who this was, but as soon as I heard the voice, it hit me who she was. But this is not really a good fit for me thematically or musically. And again, it just made me say, why wasn't Ricky Nelson the musical guest and they had her a different time? Nothing against her. She's got a tremendous voice.
So sad. At this point, I kind of wanted the episode to be over, to be honest. I'm just like, okay. I know. I was so done. I was so disappointed. She did her thing. Was it my thing? No. Someone else's? Maybe. It's already been a music-heavy night.
I can dig it.
Ricky barely even doing double duty. I mean, he's not even really hosting. He plays himself a couple of times. Like, get the hell out of here.
That is true. Yes, he's mostly playing himself over and over again.
Just on the single duty, I think, tonight, Ricky.
You guys are accusing Ricky Nelson of doing half duty?
Yes.
Yes.
This was weird, and she's weird, and that's why I liked it a little bit. She has a strange voice, and it hits weird notes and weird places. It's also not as twangy country as I expected. Much like Rebecca, I have not really enjoyed it all. It's like watching a little like, ooh, look what we were like in the 50s time capsule. This was a slice of 70s weirdness that I could at least latch onto a little.
We're now off to a PSA about helium. Ricky Nelson hosts this as himself. He says life can be short.
Are you serious?
Oh, yeah, himself. He says life can be short with few fleeting moments of happiness, and we cherish these moments. But there's so many moments of sadness and depression. So he suggests if you have bad news to give someone, you should do so after inhaling helium. And he does so a few times and gives some bad news, and then says if you have bad news, say it with helium. I thought this was a quick and funny piece. Again, Ricky Nelson was good. A lot of people could have did this, but this is also the type of thing you would pop out for someone who might be limited, I suppose, as a performer, or someone who's got kind of that, the type of persona who might do a PSA.
I'm glad it was short because it really just made me roll my eyes. I just thought it was a little too silly, a little too dumb. And if you're going to do something like that, you got to get the sound effects right. When you play clunky with the sound effects, it just looks cheap and stupid.
Even if the rest of the episode was done with everyone in helium voices, it would not save anything tonight. My depression is low. At this point, I'm really just not feeling anything, which is kind of sad.
There's a lot of levels. Like this is it sounds like this one has really taken your soul.
Was that vocal modulation and not actually helium that changed his voice?
Correct.
We're now off to the Barber Shop, and this one's written by Don Novello, and it's from the same mall series as the Scotch Tape boutique piece from the Fred Willard episode. Basically, the mall is failing, and these are the stores in the mall and the employees and managers' reaction to it. So Lorraine is giving Ricky Nelson a manicure while Bill cuts his hair. She's talking about the Osmond specials and predicts that Jimmy Osmond will become more famous than the rest of his siblings. Someone calls to make an appointment, and Lorraine says that she won't be there that day as she's taking a job at another salon in a new mall. Bill overhears this, and then he overhears her say that she'll see him there. So the appointment caller is going to the new mall too. Bill says because it's her last day, she can go, and she takes off. We find out then that Ricky Nelson is actually another barber. And Dan Aykroyd comes in as his character, also from the Scotch Tape boutique sketch, as Floyd Hunger. And he's a tailor in a neighboring shop. He's not selling many suits, despite it being Valentine's Day. Rick tells them that the new mall has no parking and the people will gradually come back to their mall. Floyd, Dan's character, asks about their business. They say they're doing okay, but it's really because of their hospital business that they're making ends meet. Bill then tells a story about a man dying while he was cutting his hair, and the guy's head dropped, and Bill thought that he just wanted the back of his head done better. A kid then calls joking, saying that he wants a haircut. He laughs about needing an appointment. They then talk about Puppyland and if it's going to leave the mall or not. Gilda then comes in as Jenny, her character from the Scotch Tape sketch. She comes in talking about all the stores leaving the mall. She mentions that business is good for them as a lot of people are buying tape to put up their going out of business signs. Ricky's character asks her for some Scotch tape. She says she'll go back to the shop and send Kevin, their stock boy, over with a roll of tape. The camera then goes to the door for a very long time, and Belushi comes in. He brought the wrong roll of tape. Floyd finishes getting his haircut, and he tells Ricky that he'll have to pay next week. Belushi comes back in with the right kind of tape. They offer to cut his hair, and he says his mother cuts his hair. Besides, he doesn't need an appointment, revealing that he was the prank caller earlier. This one was nowhere near as good as the Scotch Tape one, but I'm really enjoying this little world of failure that they've created. Murray and Nelson were fine. Murray's delivery of the story about the dead guy was pretty good. Nice to see Gilda coming back as Jenny, Belushi as Kevin. And from the weird opinion file, I think this is the first time where it really seems like John Belushi was off. There was some really weird slurring and stuff going on there. I mean, that could be tired, but he seemed not at his best during this sketch.
Yeah, this was the most enjoyable sketch of the night. It was cute. I liked the reveal that Ricky was another barber, when you just think he might be another customer. And I was wondering why the customer was so...
Me too, yeah.
So like, yeah, go. It's fine. It's your last day. No hard feelings. I'm like, why does he have anything to say?
I actually have written here, Rebecca, as Ricky Nelson was sitting in the barber chair with the thing over. I thought he read Bill's cue card.
Yeah, I did that too, to be honest. I was like, wait a sec, he stole someone's line.
Yeah.
Also was very curious. I guess Belushi missed his entrance, why the camera was on the door for so long. I mean, like you said, maybe that was kind of a bit of a slip. It was the best sketch of the night, but it was not the best sketch I've seen. On a very bad night, this comes out in a good way.
For further context, I'll send you the Scotch Tape Boutique sketch, which will make this one even better, I think.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. It's interesting social commentary, I guess, too, on, if you look nowadays, the malls are all dying due to online purchasing and selling. So, you could make some links to today and people's shopping habits and stuff. Wasn't top of the pops, that's for sure.
I think the idea is so great. You kind of mentioned it, Keith. There's this like little universe of failure that is this mall. What a good idea for a show. This should be a great weird series of sketches. The idea is there, but again, I think the execution leaves a little to be desired. Everybody's pretty invested in their roles. Nobody's sleeping on it, but I noticed like the audience isn't laughing. It's a later in the show sketch. So sometimes they tend to be a little stranger, and that's fine. And there's a strangeness to this, certainly, that I can appreciate, but it's still awfully rough around the edges for my liking. I definitely liked the first installment more. It was missing something. I can't put my finger on it.
We're now off to PIcasso, the New York years, and this is a Tom Schiller reel, and it talks about Picasso's time living in New York. Schiller plays a reporter type who's going around asking folks about their memories of Picasso. So he goes to a deli where they reminisce about him hanging around. He goes to Atlas Barber School, and they mention that Picasso tried to become a barber but was too artistic. The bartender at Pat's Bar remembers him coming in all the time with a few women, and a pair of butchers remember him being a big fan of the veal. And finally, in front of a large sculpture, says it was left behind by Picasso as a gift. And this is entirely fictitious. Picasso never came to America, to my knowledge. I really enjoy the Schiller's reels, and I kind of really enjoyed this one. It's certainly not up there with his best, but I really did like this. I thought it was a lot of fun.
I thought this was pretty fun, too. I thought it was really silly. And the idea of Picasso going to do this shit was just such nonsense. It was, and the whole thing was such a breath of fresh air after everything we've just sat through. Just to have something a little more Saturday nighty, for lack of a better way to put it.
Yeah, I did enjoy this, but now I'm kind of sad because I thought I was learning something new.
Yeah.
I was like, I never knew that. That's something I haven't heard before. And now I know why. I am dumb.
Picasso was a pretty boring guy.
Yeah, but I thought I thought some of it was probably fake. That I knew him, he used to sit back there. That kind of stuff, which is catchy when people are like, did you ever know that famous person that lived in your neighborhood growing up as kids? You're like, oh yeah, he's his best friend. So I thought some of it was definitely fake, but I kind of thought the overall story was true. So I guess good reporting. You made me believe him. So that was good. But no, I enjoyed it though. It was fun. But yeah, on a low night, this was the other thing that was entertaining and interesting.
Definitely a testament to how good it was, because
yes.
I mean, I just don't think Picasso ever went to the States. If I didn't know that little thing, I would have believed this. We now go to Dream Lover, and Rick Nelson does a performance of Bobby Darin's Dream Lover. This is far slower and far more melancholy than the original. I did enjoy it. I love that original song too. I'm a big Bobby Darin fan in general. Weird way to end the night though. So down. And there was a lot of music tonight.
Like, you know what? Just go ahead. Put a bullet in their heads.
I wrote, Matt is going to think he's singing Dream Lover because the audience is already asleep.
I enjoy this song. Again, it's another throwback to my childhood, listening to my dad's music. But I also thought, why is he playing it so slow? It was draggy. He sang it well, whatever. I enjoy the song. It's a good song. Awful way to end the night.
Bobby Darin's version is like, this is a young man who just hasn't found love yet, but he will. This Ricky Nelson version is like, this man is going to die alone.
Oh, depressing.
We're now off to the good nights. Nice, fun, raucous crowd. I did notice Belushi wasn't there. Considering what I thought I saw earlier, I wasn't surprised. Although at this point in time, he is traveling back and forth, so he may be on his way to a plane. So let's rate this baby. The host. I thought Ricky Nelson was good. He was not great. He did what he could. Pleasant and charming host. Probably a nice fellow. He didn't go, or they kept him away from being too out there and trying anything that's too out of character. And definitely they overcapitalized on his musical chops. I really think he should have been the musical guest. No knock at Judy Collins.
He was just playing him. He didn't really do anything out of the box or any real characters. So it wasn't super interesting or like, oh, wow, look, yeah, he's doing something, No, he's just being him.
Mr. Nelson, what are you doing here? It's like he's just there hanging out. Like, yeah, go do a few things. It's like this guy didn't need a week to prepare for the show. He already knows how to play his songs with his band. Like, what did he do all week?
Practice their Spanish, perhaps. Music. I enjoyed Ricky Nelson stuff. I'm not too sure why Collins was even there. Sometimes when the host is doing double duty, they'll throw someone in for one performance. Not sure it was necessary here. And because of the tone of the song, it may have actually brought the energy down more than it had to go. Musically, the thing that's remembered from this show is Candy Slice, and that didn't hit for me on all cylinders. So kind of a flat night for music, even though I do enjoy Ricky Nelson's music.
I enjoyed the nostalgia, the throwback, the memories that his music brought to me.
It was all such a snooze fest. Like, you're lighting up the charts right now. Like, this isn't a big get for the show. So let's make sure we get her in there for one song. It was the whole thing. The whole show seemed like it was targeted at a different generation this week. It's all very confusing, and especially that slow ass depressing last song. It was a tough go.
We're off to the worst sketch of the night. I think you might have a few choices there. I have slightly less, but go ahead.
I think for me, it was probably the Macho sketch was probably the least enjoyable.
Matthew?
My least favorite was the television throwback, the Leave It to Beaver business.
Sure.
I thought it was too long and just a really strange placement in the show, and really not taking into account the audience of your hit TV show at all. But again, you know what? No, I can't say that fairly, because I got to remember this came out in 1979, and it's a totally different perception that I'm viewing it as today. Don't get me wrong, it is still my least favorite sketch of the night, just because I didn't find it funny, because I don't connect to any of this and I don't know who half of these people are. But let me retract, what I said.
Yeah, this is fodder for people, at a time when this sort of thing wasn't parodied very much, being parodied, and this is the shows they grew up with. So yeah, it is for the time, but it's not for our time. Rebecca, I agreed with you. Worst sketch was the Macho one. Some great performances in there, some really good stuff, but as a sketch, it went all out of whack, and we'd already seen old TV parody there. The first bits were good, and that abrupt turn just didn't work for me. What's the best sketch of the night?
The barbershop.
Okay, Matthew?
As much as it was a tale of two sketches, I guess I have to give it to the Candy Slice Jerry Aldini sketch, because up until the full Candy Slice performance, I was enjoying it a great deal.
And we're going three different ways, and there's no surprise here. I love that Twilight Zone sketch, but I'm also eccentric in my TV watching and probably know more about these shows than I do 90% of any sitcoms that are on television today. I thought it was great. And like a lot of other things tonight, big kudos for the production guys, because that was not an easy thing to pull off. So who was your star of the night? I'm very eager to find out what you guys are thinking on your stars?
My star of the night was Dan Aykroyd because I did think he was the highlight of the Twilight Zone sketch. Yeah, whenever he was out there doing his bits and his characters, he was doing them with typical strength. And you know what, to be honest, I really just didn't notice too many of the other cast members very prominently tonight. They were not carrying the show tonight. There was so much of these damn performances.
Yeah, I actually am going to just almost copy and paste what Matt said, but make it slightly different so the teacher doesn't catch on. Yeah, Dan, he was, for me, the person who stood out tonight. He was great in the little barbershop bit. He did great on the Twilight, the narrator dude, like, he was good tonight. Everyone else just kind of seemed to be doing good, but like nothing was outstanding. And I just, even when they did like characters like Candy, I just didn't enjoy their character. So it was Dan for me tonight also.
Well, I couldn't disagree more with you two. Tonight for me it was Bill Murray. He was all over the episode. Not a complete tour de force, but he was great in everything. The cold open, Jerry Aldini, his bit in the Mexican game show was fine. Barbershop, I thought he actually did some good acting there. Shitty weekend update, but he did his part well. He really, I thought he anchored the show extremely well tonight. Not knocking Dan. Dan was fine. But I thought this was a real good night for Bill Murray, and really, really appreciated what he threw on the table for us tonight. So overall, there was a lot of music tonight, and there was also a lot of longer bits. So this is like an interesting episode to grade because it felt like we were short a few sketches. Nelson's music was fine, but none were new, and they weren't hits, so it's all nostalgia, basically. Capable actor, not one that could be used, and certainly wasn't tested by stepping too far away from himself. Seemed very likable and happy to be there, and was a good supporting player for folks. But the show definitely felt like it was missing something. There was a vibe here tonight. It was similar to the ones after Chevy left, where it felt like they were down a person or somebody wasn't there. But that wasn't the case. They even had Tom Schiller coming out doing stuff, and it still felt like shorthanded, I think. They were very low on recurring characters, which I appreciated tonight because we really only saw, I think, Candy and Chico there. I laughed a bit at this. I was not expecting much, so I certainly wasn't disappointed. I think the fate of this show in my mind is like maybe the worst thing you can say about a show is that for me, it's just going to be a forgettable show that I don't think of too much. Even our choices for top sketch of the night, none of them strike me as anything that is going to be, a contender for our favorite sketches of the year. And conversely, like our least favorite stuff is just stuff that's not going to make those lists either. So other than Bill Murray having a great night and some nice down memory lane for a time I didn't even exist in, there wasn't much here for me. That being said, I didn't hate it either. I found it was a fairly quick watch for me. So I actually am giving this one a 5 out of 10.
Oh, you are generous, sir. Very generous. I also agree to the point of like, even though I really did not enjoy this episode at all, there's nothing in here that even made me hate it so much that I had like passionate hate against it. There's nothing that I will remember being like, oh my God, that was the episode with that stupid sketch that I hated. Just to me, you said it was quick. It felt drudgeringly long. Probably will give this like a 2 out of 10.
I'm going over my notes. Before I answer that question, I'm going over my notes here, and I'm really kind of thinking, and I'm hearing what you're saying. And, every once in a while, I like to do this. And it's because I mean it. But I think it's important to change my answer, because I think you're right about Bill Murray. I would like to formally change my answer.
I knew you would.
How dare you, traitor?
I was thinking, because you know what, when I was going over it in my head here, I forgot about the DJ bit in the cold open, which I really liked. And I thought about how good he was in it. And then I thought about the other just kind of interesting but different characters that he did throughout the show.
But due to the fact that you didn't remember it until it was mentioned speaks something else, right?
I mean, that's, then there's too many variables to consider there. Like, I smoke a lot of weed. So
there is a precedent
on my short-term memory. My final score, considering this show, I got to look at the strengths, and I did not have a lot of strengths. I mean, Bill Murray was certainly a strength. I used one of my rare, I can only do it while we're still recording the show only moves, where I changed my answer after providing one. And because it was right, and he really was around a lot and doing a lot, and god damn it, I really like Jerry Aldini. And then I have to look at weaknesses, and I found that there was just a lot. It aged really poorly. It was so topical, and it was so very much looking into the recent contemporary past with all these old television references and things like that. I found it a struggle to watch as a person that was just not into that. I don't really go back further than 1960 in my tastes of things. I give this episode, because of all the music and because of the lack of laughs, a 3.5 out of 10.
Okay. Not looking good here, but let's see what we've got. With my 5, your 3.5, Rebecca's 2, averages it out at 3.5, which makes it one of our lowest ones, actually finishing worse than the Frank Zappa episode, which was the Vegas money for me was going to be that was the worst. Absolute distaste for this episode dragged it way down.
This episode committed a much bigger sin, in my opinion, of television, in that it was just extremely boring.
Yep, boredom over bad. Yeah, yep.
I like watching bad shit.
The folks over at the Internet Movie Database liked this a lot more than we did. They gave it a 7.3 out of 10, which is ridiculously high. I mean, that's almost 3 points higher than we were. For them, this finished 8 out of 20 for the season. But yeah, it is it's going to be a forgettable episode, I think. And there's a few from season 1 that, we've talked about. I've edited hours of episodes, and they just kind of slide off the rails.
What happens? Just listen to our recaps, skip the shows.
Rebecca, thank you very much for joining us this week. Hopefully we'll see you again before too long.
Yeah, thanks guys for having me. It's a lot of fun talking to you.
I like how you caught yourself.
Sometimes talking about these episodes is far more interesting than actually watching them.
Yes, yeah.
And I hope listening to us talk about them is an enjoyable experience for folks as well.
I hope so. But yeah, hopefully my next time around it'll be a lot more entertaining and I'll get a lot more belly laughs.
All right. Well, thank you, Rebecca. Have a great night.
Good night, guys. Thank you.
Bye. Do you know who our host is next week?
I don't.
Kate Jackson from Charlie's Angels.
Oh, okay.
And her musical guest is Delbert McClinton.
Who's that? I don't know who that is.
That was a guest insisted on by John Belushi, and according to some sources online, he threatened to quit if McClinton wasn't given the spot.
Oh, gosh. Is it bluesy music?
Yeah. So Matt and I will be back in about a week with Kate Jackson and Delbert McClinton, but until then, we'll be applying for jobs at that new mall with shitty parking here in SNL.